Good Saturday morning to you. Welcome into WEEI. Dan Bahl with you just after 11 o'clock here on Saturday, October the 25th. 2025. Thanks so much for being with us here on Boston Sports Original in our Brighton studios, powered by Verizon. Hello to those listening on the flagship 93.7 WEEI here in Boston, as well as those listening on our affiliates in the Cape, Providence, Rhode Island, Springfield, Worcester, Portland, Maine, Keene, New Hampshire, Claremont, New Hampshire, as well as White River Junction, Vermont. And of course, there are those who are listening on the free Odyssey app. If you haven't downloaded that already, make sure you do. No matter where you're listening and how you're listening, you can join the conversation at 617-779-7937. That's how you call. That's how you text. We got a lot to get to on the show today. As though the Red Sox are not playing, baseball is still in these sports zeitgeist, so to speak. So coming up later on today, we'll talk to Jeff Merrick, who is a host of The Sheet of Daily Faceoff on the Nation Network. He's been with Sportsnet. He's been all over the place in the hockey world to try to get some answers on the Boston Bruins. And I know Razor and Billy Jaffe on the Morning Brew earlier this morning tried to give you some answers. I appreciate their insights, and I felt better listening to them, but I still have plenty of questions. So we'll talk to Jeff Merrick at 11:45 this morning. We got plenty of Bruins talk coming up, as well as a look at the Boston Celtics and their 0-2 start, the first time since the 2021-22 season that the Celtics have started 0-2. And there's plenty to be pessimistic about. Some rays of sunshine that have come through, but 2 quarters over 8 quarters worth of basketball in which they've allowed 42 points to an opposing team. Not necessarily a stat that you want to kind of lead the post-game recap with, but we'll get to them and then some Red Sox and World Series thoughts as well. But we begin with what Ken and Curtis were talking about to end their show, Patriots and the trade deadline. And for the first time since at least 2021, and you could even go back and rewind to 2019 if you really want to go that far, the Patriots are in the position where we can have a conversation not about here's who's going to be shipped away by the Patriots for draft capital at the trade deadline, but rather here's who makes sense for the Patriots in order to potentially go on a bit of a run. It is a historically easy stretch of schedule for the New England Patriots this season. It is, as was shared by Mike Giardi yesterday on the afternoon show, the easiest strength of schedule since at least 1978. And I believe the research was still going on at the time that Giardi shared that stat. So it's very easy to say this is the easiest stretch of schedule for the Patriots since the merger. So that's what's in front of us here with a team that's already the number 2 seed in the AFC entering play this weekend. So the question then becomes, do the Patriots, given that it's their first season of real, competition in this era of football, do they have the stomach to make significant additions? You could absolutely make the argument that no, they will not, and no, they don't have the stomach to do that, because look at what they've done already with what they have. It was supposed to be a season of building. It was supposed to be a season of, all right, we're taking steps towards becoming a contender. And it certainly wasn't supposed to be a season. I think most of us, 9 out of every 10 Patriots fans would say we probably didn't expect them to be in a position where we're talking about the kind of impact additions that could help a team make it to a divisional round game, an AFC championship game. And I know that this is Homer Honk Central saying these kind of things, but what about the schedule and the way this team is played deters you from having that kind of conversation? So the pessimistic naysayer would say, well, look at what they've done 7 games in with this ragtag bunch of players around Drake May. That's what the naysayer would say, and they'd go, all right, let's run it with what they had. The vibes are immaculate. The culture being established by Mike Vrabel is immaculate. Why would I make an addition that would screw that up? Why would I risk the future in order to try to, roll the dice on a gamble that could potentially positively impact the present? That's what the naysayer would say. And I think there's some credence to that. They weren't supposed to be at this point 7 games into the season, so why not let this group see what they can prove without having to do that? But where's the fun in that conversation? Why would I sit here and go, yeah, they should just stand pat? Where's the fun in that? It's easy to argue that if you make a couple of swift additions, 1 to 2 additions in key areas, which I'll list out in just a moment, you have a legitimate chance to do something pretty special this season. We're talking about a team that could coast their way through the rest of the regular season and lock down a high seed in the AFC and make it pretty easy on yourself to do something if, again, you play your cards right. So that leads us into who everybody was hoping to hear from this morning, Diana Rossini of The Athletic, and what she's hearing so far in terms of trade scuttlebutt in the NFL. And just let me know at 617-779-7937 if any of these names kind of ring in your ears a little bit. The first name that's kind of popped off here earlier this morning is the Jacksonville Jaguars and king of the drops, Brian Thomas Jr. According to Diana Rossini, the Jaguars are listening on calls for Brian Thomas. Even if a move feels highly unlikely, they're also shopping for defense. I mean, if this is in any way a possibility, I know he's had his issues with consistently catching the football this season.
Are you out of your mind?
David Azer, not a fan, or you just don't think it's going to happen?
I just don't think it's going to happen. Like year two, I mean, he's dropped off a lot in his sophomore season, but I just don't think that's enough to move on. Like you have Travis Hunter for the Jaguars, but past that, I mean, what else if you move him?
No, that's true. That's admitting it caught me completely off guard when I read it this morning because the Jaguars are a team that are right in the thick of things this season. And Thomas, in his second year, 365 receiving yards over 7 games and a touchdown. He has not been good. The drops have been significant, but it's kind of a chicken or egg conversation that we need to have. Is it Brian Thomas that has an issue catching the ball, or is it Trevor Lawrence that's having a tough time finding him in spots where he can make catches? How many more hospital balls can you throw to Brian Thomas before he gets a little tired of things? So, again, I would be stunned if there was actually any veracity to this rumor. But if there is, doesn't 23-year-old Brian Thomas make way more sense than an A.J. Brown or a Chris Olave or a guy who you're dealing with, where are they in their career? Are they on the upswing? Are they on the downswing? Olave more than Brown, you could say, well, this guy probably still has a lot left in the tank, but matching a 23-year-old Brian Thomas with your second-year quarterback, if there's anything to this, that's one name where I go, screw the future. Screw my first-round pick in 2026. I'm trading heaven and earth to try to unequivocally solve who is my number one wide receiver for a decade. So, again, to David's point, is this in the least bit possible? No. But, I mean, Diana Rossini is legitimate enough of a reporter where if she says the Jaguars are taking calls, you should be ashamed if you're Mike Vrabel or Elliott Wolf or whoever the hell is making the decisions with the Patriots, if you're not one of those calls to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who would be foolish to even consider making that kind of move. But you have to have that conversation if that's in any way a possibility. So that was really the main name that jumped out. And now I also want to clarify, I did not have wide receiver ranked highly on my board of what I think the Patriots should do at the trade deadline, what I think they need to address. I, in putting the positions together, actually ended up moving them down to 6th. And I think you could actually argue it's even 7th. Running back to me is far and away the number one thing that you have to address. Because Ramondre Stevenson, I understand that he had a pretty good game last weekend, but you cannot let one game distract you from what has been a years-long issue with him putting the ball on the ground. I know that they're trying to coach him up, hold the ball high, hold it with 2 hands, protect the ball when you're going to the ground. These are all great things that you can tell a player, but there's 2 things. Mike Vrabel cannot transform into Ramondre Stevenson and do it. Ramondre is going to have to learn himself. And there's such a thing as the yips. When you have to start thinking about where the ball is, how secure it is in my hands as you're running towards these 300-pound defensive linemen, it becomes too much in a split second for a running back to deal with. I I don't envision a future where Ramondre's fumbling issues are just going to magically, poof, disappear. And then you've got the guy that you thought you paid for a couple years ago. So that's still going to be an issue. TreVeyon Henderson has not taken the kind of jump that I think a lot of Patriots fans were banking on him taking. I also don't fully believe that Josh McDaniels and the offensive coaches have really figured out how he fits into the offense. It just hasn't looked like a good fit yet. He's supposed to be this ultimate Swiss Army knife, can put him anywhere, can split him out wide, you can use him in any kind of situation. But there's been so much just run him up the middle, run him up the middle, run him up the middle. And I don't think McDaniels has figured it out, and I don't think TreVeyon has figured out how to make the most of his opportunities either. So that's the state of the running back room right now for the Patriots. And you don't want to put this into the world, but I mean, it's the state of the NFL. Injuries happen all the time. You're one injury away from it being one of those guys, and then Terrell Jennings as your second string running back. That's unacceptable. And maybe most important in all of this conversation about adding a running back, and I see the calls lining up at 617-779-7937. What's your biggest area of need for the Patriots at the trade deadline? Mine is running back, and I don't think there's really a close second for me, though I've listed a few. The most important thing for me in terms of adding a running back to this offense is you have asked so much of Drake May to this point in the season. And to his credit, he's delivered. He has delivered to a point where in our next segment, we'll run through some of the numbers to kind of prove through 7 weeks, you're not going to find a more valuable player to their team than Drake May. But we'll get to that as I get my my homerish Patriots takes out here on WEEI. You've asked so much of Drake and this passing offense through 7 games, and they have absolutely risen to the challenge. But what happens if the pendulum swings back and instead of facing the third most 8-man boxes in the league, basically daring Drake to throw, and he's beaten defenses cleanly on that all season, what happens when there's adjustments? What happens when all of a sudden you start to see more guys dropping back in coverage, and all of a sudden it's harder for Drake to complete these explosive plays? I read it yesterday that Drake has more touchdowns, 5, on completions of 20 or more yards than incompletions this year. More touchdowns than incompletions on passes of 20 or more yards. That's crazy. And it's also a commentary on, well, this is the kind of defensive coverage that the Patriots are facing. If you start to face different looks on defense, it's going to change the dynamic of the Patriots offense. It's going to limit the ability for Drake to air it out and complete these explosive plays and pass with the kind of efficiency that he has so far this season. So you need to, have to, absolutely must bring in another weapon to try to balance out this offense a little bit more, to rebuild some trust in the run game. Because you saw it on display last week. When the Patriots have a running back that opposing defenses not even fear, but at least have to be cognizant of. Last week you had Ramondre at least being somewhat productive. It opens up the play action in a way that we hadn't seen yet this season. So I think if you're able to do that on a more consistent basis with the way Drake is playing, it vaults this offense towards the top of the league. So that is my impassioned speech, and I remove myself from my soapbox to tell you that running back has to be at the top of the list for this team. Has to. With the way that the passing offense is operating above expectation. It's been so much better than I think anybody could have expected through 7 games. You now have a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2. And neither of them are Pop Douglas. And I know this is going to blow your mind, but neither of them are Efton Chisholm either. Remember all that during the offseason? He's going to be the next star. He's the next Julian Edelman, the next Danny Amendola. That was the state of the conversations we were having around this passing offense in the offseason. But come to find out, your best players have played their best. Stephon Diggs has become a really reliable target in all different depths of target. Kayshon Boutte has been the best deep ball receiver in football, or top 3 at very worst, statistically speaking, so far this season. The catches above expected and all that other crap that I cite on the afternoon show, but I don't actually really memorize. He has been tremendous in all of that. So adding another running back to that room to me is huge. The running backs that were listed, trade targets in The Athletic. This was not Diana Rossini. This was earlier on this week. The two at the bottom of the list, Browns running back Jerome Ford and Jets running back Breece Hall. Two very, very different situations that you're tapping into if you're making those trades. Breece Hall is at least should be a bell cow 3-down back in this league. He just plays for the New York Jets, and unfortunately, that's its own weight that you tie to your ankles as you're trying to run. Oh, I play running back or anything for the New York Jets. All right, we'll knock some of the stats off of my ledger because it's just it's its own curse. But I think him on a team with an offensive line that can run block at least halfway decently and a quarterback that at least puts a little bit of fear into opposing defenses is incredible. But you're going to have to pay through the nose for that player. Jerome Ford is a little bit different, and you're going to see this running game on display tomorrow because Quinshon Judkins is about him and the tight end Fannin are about the only things in the Browns offense that actually work the way they're supposed to. And Jerome Ford came in as the number one back because Judkins hadn't signed, and there was a bunch of stuff going on during the offseason, but he has jumped in and secured that number one spot. And now you have to imagine the state of the Browns, they're going to be looking to pick up some assets here at the trade deadline if they get the opportunity. So running back is number one for me. Those were the two players that are listed. You can go to every bad team in the league and wonder, okay, well, who's the number one? Who's the number two? Can I get some kind of value off of this? You know who I'd be calling right now is the Carolina Panthers because they have two running backs right now in Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, both of whom I would take at least to run in tandem with Ramondre Stevenson, if not get the first carry. Dowdle in those couple games that he had when Hubbard was hurt was historically good. You know, the two players that you think of in the same sentence, Christian McCaffrey in his prime and Rico Dowdle in his prime. But those are the kind of stats he was putting up. That's the team I would be calling. Absolutely see what you can do to try to get one of those guys. But anyways, 617-779-7937. We'll take your calls on the trade deadline. Let's get one in quickly before the break. Justin is in Washington, D.C. What's up, Justin?
Hey, Dan. First, I want to start off by saying you're not being a homer. I think we need to realize this. The Commanders' roster is atrocious. Humble brag, I'm a season ticket holder.
Oh, wow.
And they went into Tampa Bay and Detroit last season on the road in the playoffs, and they won because of their quarterback. So we need to start buying in. And I agree we need a running back. Go trade a seventh-round pick for a running back. I do think, though, I just saw the Commanders trade a second-round pick for Marcus Lattimore, and he has been atrocious. We saw Mohamed Sanu here.
Yep.
He was atrocious. So I think if you're going to make a big trade, it really needs to be for a star player. Also somebody that when they learn the playbook, it's rather straightforward. So that's why I look at defensive line. And I don't want to just stick on Max Crosby, but if you go trade a first and a second for Max Crosby, you got a guy on a team-friendly contract at $30 million a year. He's young. He's 28, 29, and he's signed for 3 more seasons. So considering that they could actually go and make a run at this thing in the playoffs, I think they need to be all in. And I don't want another meek-willed stiff like Craig Breslow in the front office running the Patriots. I want somebody to put their cojones on the table, Dan. What does that sound like?
Love it. I love it, Justin. Thank you for the call. And Bresbot will be answering in short order to you, Justin. But look, I would love to be in the kind of situation where I think the Patriots are going to trade, a first or 2 firsts and for this all-world player. I'm trying to keep my expectations realistic for what I think this team is thinking they're capable of this year. I just don't see, given that this is supposed to be the first year of whatever this era of Patriots football is going to be, and I know they're so far ahead of schedule, I don't see them taking that kind of swing. I heard Ken mention trading for Myles Garrett, and David jumped in. I'm like, that's my guy back behind the glass jumping in and saying that's not going to happen. The money is prohibitive. The dead cap that has to be exchanged in that deal, I think, is prohibitive to a trade. But I love the fact that we're talking about Max Crosby or Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett or one of these generational pass rushers that apparently either are or aren't on the block depending on which day it is. I'm just trying to look more. I'm looking more around the fringes because I think that's more realistic in what the Patriots are going to look at when the deadline comes around. It's going to be a mid to lower round pick, as Justin alluded to, a 7th round pick for a running back, a 6th, a 5th, whatever. I don't think anything above a 4th round pick would get moved in any trade. But I did like from the 860 Devon Achane. Or Devon Achane, whatever his first name is, Achane from the Dolphins. If there was any rumor, I kind of file that in Brian Thomas category, where is it going to happen? Probably not. Is that a team that's a dumpster fire that may be looking to recoup some assets right now, fire their coach and start a rebuild? Absolutely. And that's the kind of guy that also changes an offense. But let's talk some trades at 617-779-7937. We got a couple calls we'll get to on the other side of the break. Don't forget, Jeff Merrick will join us to talk Bruins hockey and NHL hockey at 11:45. But before all of that, here's David Azer and what's trending.
Dan Bahl on WEEI.
Isn't it great to be talking about who the New England Patriots can add at the trade deadline this year? Isn't it great to talk about tinkering to play armchair GM, not for who has the best draft capital that you can acquire, sending somebody out the door, but instead we can talk about names like the names that have been mentioned on our text line, 617-779-7937 from the 508, Pop Douglas and a 7th to the Falcons for Tyler Algier. They just have a running back committee with Henderson, Stevenson, and Algier. I don't mind that. Bijan Robinson has become arguably the best running back, or maybe second best behind Jonathan Taylor's season. So he has also been responsible, Bijan has, for an absurd percentage of the Falcons. It was like 40% of the Falcons offense or something like that. From Frank at the 240, do not trade away premium draft picks, nothing more than a 4th and maybe a fringe player like Kyle Duggar. Safety, by the way, was my number 2 on my list of positions I think the Patriots should be focusing on at the trade deadline, just because you've already seen it was a thin position coming into the year, and then you cut Peppers because that makes sense. Duggar's banged up; he's dealing with a knee injury. He's the only player that's questionable for tomorrow. But you've had Jalen Hawkins dealing with injuries. It's just been a very inconsistent rotation of guys at the safety position. So if you're looking in the secondary, I'd have that conversation as well. Somebody jumped in on the text line. I got to see if I can find it quickly. Oh, there we go. From the 860, this plan is good. I like when somebody prefaces their text by saying, like, ignore all this other crap that you're hearing, Dan. This is the plan. Trade the Raiders for Jackson Powers Johnson. That kid could protect May. Okay. I'm never gonna complain about making a trade on the offensive line. Your one issue, and I don't know this off the top of my head, so I'd have to do some more research. So Jackson Powers Johnson is currently the right guard for the Las Vegas Raiders. As long as he can swing to the other side and play left guard, I'm all for it, because I'm really impressed with the start for Will Campbell. Garrett Bradbury has been the ultimate no news is good news center so far. You barely hear him other than just a stray graphic from Pro Football Focus after a good week. And Morgan Moses was one of 7 or 8 tackles that didn't allow a pressure last week, and Onwenu was the only known quantity on the offensive line to begin with. That one spot where you're like, I'm not entirely sure I love the plan moving forward is left guard. So if there was somebody out there who you could slide right in between Campbell and Bradbury, and it's no disrespect to Jared Wilson and it's no disrespect to Ben Brown. I just think if we're talking about an offensive line that's now kind of become a 4 out of 5 solved mysteries, then I think that would do wonders in kind of shoring it up. I think Wilson could still very well be the center of the future. He's a natural center. I harped on that. I didn't understand why he wasn't playing center, and then Garrett Bradbury's come out and had a season that's been a 180-degree shift, a complete change from what we saw at the end of his time in Minnesota. So, hey, tells you what I know about coaching the offensive line. But they figured that out, and I just think between Wilson and Brown, yeah, fine, I can talk myself into it, but I just it takes a lot of pressure off of Campbell, takes a lot of pressure off of Bradbury, and it just continues to shore up an offensive line that's done pretty well in front of Drake May. So we have Jeff Merrick joining. We're gonna switch to the Bruins in just a couple of minutes. So let's rip through some trade calls. Let's go with Mike in Randolph. Good morning, Mike. How are you? Mike, going once, going twice.
I got you.
What's going on, Mike?
Mute, sorry.
No, you're good.
Good morning, Dan. Hey, look, one of your texts, I made a good point. I wouldn't go anywhere crazy more than a third or fourth unless it was a huge splash. And I think you're kind of diving into it right now. You look at it, right? Moses has been good, but he's like 35.
Yep.
Bradbury's been good. He's early to mid-30s. Onwenu's been the worst lineman on the team this year.
Right.
I think he's been way worse than Wilson. At least you have those two guys, but you got three other spots you got to show up. If I was going to trade for anything, safety would be my number one.
Okay.
Because they're giving up so many big plays over the top, and these safeties are lost. Every single one's a blown coverage by the safeties. And Kyle Duggar, good knee or bad knee, he's already washed. He's done. Again, another awful Bill pick. Second-round pick for a D2 guy. Bill was terrible. He's the reason they're in this position. And I like the trajectory we're going right now, but don't empty the cupboard for this year. If Drake May was 38 years old, I'd say sure. He's 22. Like, we have a future. Let's build. If you could get a Brian Thomas, I mean, God, Dan, how do you not do that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll give a first.
Right.
But let's not go carried away. Let's not give up 2 firsts or a first and a third. If it's a first and a sixth, sure. Okay. But let's not go carried away. Love the show, Dan. Talk to you.
Thanks, Mike. Much appreciated. Let's go to Jamie and Lynn on the running backs. What's going on, Jamie?
Not much, Dan. How are you?
Good. How are you? What's up?
Not much. I just think we should stand pat right now.
Completely stand pat. Not do a thing?
Not yet. They got obviously Stevenson, Henderson, who's going to come into shape. He's a rookie. He's played, 6-7 games. You got to give the kid a little bit of time. I know his blocking has been shady, but that kid can play. There's a reason why they drafted him in the second round of Ohio State. Vrabel had inside information on him because of his connections to Ohio State. So I think they should just stand pat right now. As a call mentioned, get some safety on the back end, and I think we're going to be good. I think we're going to be 11-5 and in a running for the division. All
right, Jamie, thank you for the call. And I don't disagree that Henderson has a lot of talent. I think he still has every chance in the world to be a good player in this league. I just what happens if Ramondre puts the ball on the ground, another 2 more times this weekend? What happens if one of them gets a little dinged up? Because again, you're only running 2 running backs out there. You lost Antonio Gibson in what was a strength of your team coming into the year, but now you're down 1. One has a fumbling problem, and one, even if he is 6 to 7 games into his career, and I agree that I think he's going to be fine. He's not fine yet. He's not an active contributor in what you're trying to do as an offense. So, yeah, I still think you're a running back away. I completely agree with the opinions there on safety being a big add. And you could make an argument almost everywhere on this roster. I wasn't even going to really bring up wide receiver as a need for this group, which is crazy. Can you imagine telling yourself 2 months ago that when we got to the trade deadline, you'd go, well, you need this, and you need this, and you need that, and you need that. But the one place that we might be okay is wide receiver. I think we thought coming into the year, like, you're calling 31 other teams and going, who do you got? Can your custodian in the building catch a couple of passes for Drake? Steph is dragging his leg behind him because he can't run. Douglas can't catch. Chisholm hasn't panned out. We were poking holes the size of Swiss cheese holes in every single wide receiver you had, and now you look and go, you know what? This group is pretty good. This group is getting the job done. So yeah, I'm not adding. If it's just to add around the fringes, I'm fine with where a wide receiver is. I really am. But if it's a true number one. Because you're going to end this season, regardless of where the Patriots finish, And now we're having conversations about 10, 11 wins, competing for the division, competing for a top seed in an AFC in a league that is just shockingly mediocre. It is just, there's been some pretty bad or boring football being played by teams that were supposed to be pretty good. Some losses that you just go, what the hell is going on? But, I mean, you take it. In a league where everybody else is mediocre and injury-prone, you vault your way up the standings, and that's just kind of the way it's been. But regardless of where they finish, we're going to leave this season with the same question that we had a season ago, which is, okay, who is my number one wide receiver? I know Diggs is on a multi-year deal. There is an out in his contract after this year, and you still are going to have the desire to pair that Brian Thomas, T. Higgins, that true game-changing number one receiver with your game-changing quarterback. And we ran out of time to talk about this, so I'll put a pin in it and revisit it later because Drake has been the MVP through 7 weeks. Okay, that's just I would like to put that out there now, and we'll revisit why in just a little bit. But by the definition of the term, most valuable player to his team. A lot of guys are having good years. Matthew Stafford's having a good year. Patrick Mahomes is having a good year. And he hasn't had as many pieces around him as maybe he has in past years. Jonathan Taylor having a career year. Most valuable to what their team is doing with the Patriots as the number 2 seed in the AFC and already more wins than each of the last 2 years. Yeah, Drake's your 7-week MVP. And I don't think the conversation, if you look at it, most valuable, the definition of the term, I don't think it's overly close. Now, maybe that is where I'd get the homer honk from Justin in D.C. But 617-779-7937. I see your calls lining up. We're going to pivot away from the Patriots and football for just a moment. So we'll revisit this conversation coming up in just a little bit because coming up next, Jeff Merrick, host of The Sheet from Daily Faceoff. He was a part of the Sportsnet coverage of the NHL for years. I'm looking for answers on the Boston Bruins, and I'm certainly hoping that Jeff will have them. We'll talk to him next.